Have you ever noticed as people that we're really good at holidays and making days that have some special meaning, right? And I really started thinking about those holidays to start with. We have a lot of national observances, a lot of different holidays that we go through. In fact, when I worked for city government, at Parks and Rec, I think I had somewhere between 12 and 14 holidays that we had off every year. And we're really good at keeping those days, right? We got anything from Martin Luther King Day to Flag Day and Labor Day and Memorial Day and all these different national holidays. And then we got the big ones, right? Like 4th of July and Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's Day. And we have all these abundance of celebrations, these holidays, and they all mean something to us. And we're really good at making sure we observe those, right? Especially the big ones, right? Some people might miss Flag Day, but they're probably not missing Memorial Day, right? Because Memorial Day is that opportunity to go just get away to the lake is what a lot of us in this area do. 4th of July in our area is great. It's very patriotic and everybody kind of comes out to celebrate the birth of our nation, and nobody misses Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's a big one, right? We're not going to miss that day of celebration to be thankful for what God's given us and to celebrate a harvest and to sit down with family and friends and make sure we eat all kinds of food and overindulge and take a nap and wake up and overindulge again, right? We're not missing that day. And Christmas is another one that we're just not going to miss, right? All the things that come along with Christmas, and we're really good at holidays, and we're really good at keeping them and making sure we follow them. And even in our personal lives, right, we're pretty good at following those days that are special to us as families or individuals, like birthdays, anniversaries. We might not go as far as some of the ladies that, it was 6 months ago today that we met for the first time or took a ride on a subway or something, right? There's all kinds of things they remember that we don't. But guys, I'm going to tell you, you got to remember anniversary. That is a big one. It's important, and you should not forget it. But it's important, right? Those days we remember, we take care of them, we remember them. We always do them. Even in Christianity, right? We have our special times and our special days. We got, we have Epiphany, and we have what we're in right now, Lent, right? We start that with Ash Wednesday, and we follow through on Lent all the way to, we got Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, and Easter, and all these different days. And we do Pentecost, and Pentecost is one of those that we've kind of changed the name from its original Hebrew to fit the Christian church. And we've got these special times throughout the Christian calendar, and as a church, we do pretty good at following those as well. But the interesting thing is, to me, is that we're really good at setting those all up, but we're not good at following the ones that God gave us, right? About following what he calls his Sabbaths. I'm going to read from Exodus 31, verses 12 and 13. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign between me and you and for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy.'" You notice God says to the Israelites, keep my Sabbaths. And I'm not going to talk about all the Sabbaths, right? There's 8 different Sabbaths. One of them is a perpetual one that comes each and every week. The other 7 are God's appointed Sabbath days. I'm guessing that most Christians would be hard-pressed to name all those. But we're really going to focus on the weekly Sabbath today. And you'll notice it's a very important day. If you were to read a little bit further in what God told Moses, he said that if there are those among you who do not keep the Sabbath and keep it holy, that you're to excommunicate them, right? You're supposed to get rid of them. And in fact, it's even punishable up to death to not keep the Sabbath and to keep it holy. And we can go back, and God commanded it, right? It's one of our 10 commandments. One of our 10 commandments is to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. Right? Back in Exodus 19, we get to our 10 commandments, and it's interesting because the Sabbath day is the 4th commandment given. As I look at the 10 Commandments, I kind of look at them as in order of importance, right? The first one is honor the Lord your God, right? God is my God and my creator, and I will have no other gods before him. Second one, do not make any graven images. Don't do those things, right? No graven images. Next one we get to is do not use the Lord thy God's name in vain. So the first 3 commandments, right, are about putting God up here, and that he is at the top of the food chain. He is the one that we look up to, that we worship, and that we keep in our hearts, and we will not have gods other than him before us. Don't make idols. Don't use the Lord's name in vain. And then we get to keep the Sabbath. Right? Keeping the Sabbath comes before the next one, which is honor your father and mother. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't covet your neighbor's stuff, right? Keeping the Sabbath even comes before the moral stuff that God lays out all for us, right? That those really important moral values. So if it's so important to God, why isn't it important to us? Right? And you might say, well, Pastor, I'm not so sure that it is that important to us because, by golly, God gave it to the Israelites. Well, it's interesting. If we just read our Bible, right, and we understand and we study a little bit, I'm going to read to you Isaiah chapter 56, and this is going to answer that question. Is it just for the Israelites, or should we be observing the Sabbath? And then we'll get into the why. Here's what Isaiah 56 says. This is what the Lord says. Maintain justice and do what is right, for my salvation is close at hand, and my righteousness will soon be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, the man who holds it fast, who keeps the Sabbath without desecrating it, and who keeps his hand from doing any evil. Let no foreigner who has bound himself to the Lord say, the Lord will surely exclude me from his people, and let not any eunuch complain, I am only a dry tree. For this is what the Lord says. To the eunuchs who keep my Sabbath, who choose what please me and hold fast to my covenant, to them I will give within my temple and its walls a memorial and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that will not be cut off. Any foreigners, folks, this is us, right? If you're not a Jew, you're not an Israelite, you are a foreigner. And foreigners who bind themselves to the Lord, to serve him, to love the name of the Lord, and to worship him, all who keep the Sabbath without desecrating it, and who hold fast to my covenant. These I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. So as you can see, this commandment to keep the Sabbath, it isn't just for Israelites, right? If we keep it, God promises that he will give us joy. He'll give us a name better than even any sons or daughters. So why don't we? Right, why don't we? Sabbath is traditionally observed in the Jewish religion from 6 o'clock on Friday night or sundown through the night, through Saturday, until evening of the next day. It's a day that God created for us, right? Jesus told us that Sabbath is created for man, not man for the Sabbath, right? The Sabbath is something that we should be taking time to observe each and every week, right? God said for 6 days you work, for 1 day you rest, that day is to be holy. And if we always remember what holy means to set something apart, to be different. And so God is asking us 52 days out of an entire year, once a week, to have a day that is set aside and to be holy. When I was a kid, Sunday was that day for us Christians, right? We've kind of set that aside, that day that was our Sabbath, right? That was the day where you got up and you went to church, and after church, you'd have a nice meal together as a family. And then you might hang out, it might be with a different family, and you'd study God's word, you'd read the Bible, and you'd sit around, right? You wouldn't do any work. and you'd spend the day with your dad and your mom and your brothers and sisters, and you might play a game, but there's definitely going to be Bible study going on, and you're definitely going to be getting to know God. And that night we'd go to church again, and you'd wake up Monday and you'd start your work week again. And that work week would go in through Saturday. But we don't do that anymore, right? The devil has twisted us into believing that we got to go, and we got to go. Work is more important. Productivity is more important. And when we're not producing, right, we got to be running. We got to be doing stuff. We got to go here. We got to go there. We got to chase the kids. We got to chase the sports. We got to do those things. And man, God made this for us, right? He gave us a sanctuary in time. A time that God has set apart for us to spend with Him. Because it's hard to maintain that relationship with God every day of the week. It really is. Right? We're so busy. People are busy. Young families are busy. People who are retired are really busy. Right? There's plenty of things to do. There's always things to do. If you have grandchildren, right, you're spending Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, maybe even Saturday, chasing around, going to basketball games or hockey games or volleyball games or baseball games or whatever sport might be in that season. And if you're a parent of those kids, right, there's constantly things going on. You got to work all day. You got to get your kids ready for school in the morning. You go to work all day. They go to school. Once school's over, you've got sports, educational things. You've got all kinds of things that take up every one of our days. In fact, Wednesdays used to be kind of sacred. Wednesday evenings, that it was confirmation night, and none of the schools had any sports activities planned, but they do now. Right now, they still do it. We're just going to cut practice a little short, but we're still going to have practice. And so trying to maintain a relationship with God throughout the week, it kind of goes like something like this. It's, hey, God, I'm here. Thanks for giving me another day. Watch over me, protect me, bless me, take care of my family. I'll see you again tomorrow. And we go about our day. It reminds me a lot of my wife and my daughter, right? My daughter lives down in Detroit Lakes, and my wife's here, and they text each other every day, right? They keep up with each other, but every once in a while, they'll call each other, right? They call and talk on the phone and get to know each other, and that's kind of how our relationships are with God during the week, is we're so busy and we're always so moving that it's hard to focus. It's hard to take time and dedicate time to studying the Bible. It's hard to take time to spend an appropriate amount of time in prayer. And that's why God gave us the Sabbath. To do something different, to not have that day where we're going, but to take that day and to unwind and to let the world stay outside the walls for a little bit, right? To not be worried about work, to not be worried about who wants me, who needs me, who needs what I have to give. It's a time to rest, to recharge, to spend time with God, to read His Bible, to meditate on Him, to pray to Him, to spend time with our families, to eat our food together, to sit down and enjoy each other's company, to talk about what we've been through in the last week, maybe to lift some of those things up to God. And somewhere along the line, the devil has tricked us. He's made us forget that God loved us so much that He would set a space, He would set a time for us to meet and come to Him. You know, it's one thing to set up a meeting, right? If I looked at one of you and saw you and said, hey, we should have coffee together, and you said yes, and that was the end of the conversation, we'd never know when, we'd never know where, we'd never know what time. But God gave us that answer. On the seventh day, to keep the Sabbath, to keep it holy. And folks, as Christians, we need to start going back to that. We need to start remembering, right? How many people, when they get done with church every Sunday, right? I might be a real good churchgoer. I might be one of those ones that I'm going to make, and I'm going to make my kids be there every week, and we're going to get there, and we're going to spend that hour in fellowship and joy. But as soon as it's over, right, I've got plans. I'm going to go do some yard work. Maybe I'm going to go run around. Maybe I'm going to run to Grand Forks. I'm going to do some shopping. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. See, even what we used to consider our Sabbath, that Sunday, even now we don't hold true to that. We might give God a couple hours, but we don't give him a day. And so as Christians, we really need to search our hearts and say, God, if you made it for me, why am I not observing it? It would do so much for our mental health, for our physical health, for our social health, to take that one day to turn off the phone, to turn off the devices, to unplug from the world and just spend it with the ones we love. Because as God tells us in his story, right, as he tells us through Isaiah, that he will give us joy if we're just willing to show that we're willing to set apart and keep it holy and do it. I want to leave you with a passage from Hebrews chapter 4. And you'll notice that the writer of Hebrews is even talking about the Sabbath. That's important. So Hebrews 4:9 says, there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Notice how he says it's for the people of God, not for just the Jews, not for just the Gentiles, not for those in between, right? It is a Sabbath rest for God's people. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from his own work, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will fall by following their example of disobedience. This isn't something that's just for us, guys. If we do not take time to observe the Sabbath and keep it holy, we are disobeying God directly. And that's something each and every one of us has to take time to think about. How can I start changing my life to do what God has given me as a sanctuary in time and space that I can spend with him? Thank you for joining us this morning. God bless and have a great week.